They conquered nations. They rewrote maps. Entire civilizations bowed at their feet. But every single one of them, every conqueror history has ever known, eventually lost it all. Not always on the battlefield. Sometimes in a palace. Sometimes at a dinner table. Sometimes from the one person they trusted most. Today we're going inside the final chapters of history's greatest conquerors. The men who had everything, and how it all collapsed. This is how they fell. Alexander the Great. King of Macedonia. Pharaoh of Egypt. Lord of Asia. By the age of 25, he had already conquered more of the known world than any man before him. His army was undefeated. His generals were legends. His ambition had no ceiling. But ambition was also his first crack. The further Alexander marched, the more his men broke down. Not from enemy swords, but from exhaustion, homesickness, and the feeling that their king had stopped being one of them and had started becoming a god. He forced his soldiers to bow before him in the Persian style. He adopted foreign customs. He executed old friends who questioned him. The man who once inspired absolute loyalty had slowly become someone his own men feared rather than followed. Then came Babylon. 323 BC. After a night of heavy drinking, some say poisoning, historians still debate it, Alexander fell into a fever that wouldn't break. For 10 days he lay dying, unable to speak. His generals gathered around his bed and asked him one final question. Who do you leave your empire to? His answer, barely a whisper, to the strongest. He was 32 years old. And the moment he closed his eyes, everything he built began to die with him. His generals tore the empire apart within a generation. His bloodline was wiped out. His own mother was executed. The cities he founded outlasted him, but the empire, the thing he gave his entire life for, vanished in decades. Julius Caesar. The man who turned a republic into his personal throne. Caesar was untouchable in the field. He won wars that should have been impossible. He crossed the Rubicon, the line no Roman general was permitted to cross with an army, and dared Rome to stop him. Nobody could. By 44 BC he was declared dictator perpetuo. Dictator in perpetuity. Basically, ruler forever. And that was his fatal mistake. Rome had always been allergic to kings. The city was built on the idea that no single man should hold total power. Caesar knew this. He had studied Roman history. He understood the culture. But he let the power blind him. He started appearing in public in the gold and purple of royalty. He sat on a golden throne in the Senate. When senators approached him, he didn't stand. He stopped pretending he wasn't a king, and Rome's elite decided they had seen enough. 23 senators. A hidden meeting. A plan. On the Ides of March 15th, 44 BC, Julius Caesar walked into the theater of Pompey for a Senate meeting. Within minutes, he was surrounded. The first blade found his shoulder. Then another. Then another. He was stabbed 23 times. The man who conquered Gaul, who outwitted Pompey, who made himself the most powerful figure in the Roman world, died on a marble floor, bleeding out, his toga pulled over his face so no one would see his expression. The senators thought killing Caesar would restore the Republic. Instead, it triggered a civil war that ended the Republic forever. They destroyed the thing they were trying to protect, and Caesar's adopted son Augustus became Rome. Genghis Khan built the largest contiguous land empire in human history. From the Pacific Ocean to the gates of Europe. From the frozen steppes of Siberia to the deserts of Persia. He was a military genius who came from nothing, literally nothing. Born into a poor clan, kidnapped as a child, abandoned on the steppe to die. He survived through sheer will and violence and emerged as the ruler of the known world. But the thing that made Genghis great was also what destroyed his legacy. He never built a system that could outlast him. The Mongol Empire was built entirely on the personality of one man. When he died in 1227, likely from injuries from a hunting trip, there was no institution strong enough to hold it together. He divided the empire among his sons. And his sons divided it further. Within 150 years his descendants were killing each other over scraps of territory. He conquered the world. But he couldn't conquer the problem of what happens after. Napoleon Bonaparte rose from a middle-class Corsican family to become Emperor of France and the dominant force in Europe for over a decade. At his peak, he controlled most of continental Europe. The Pope himself came to Paris for his coronation, and Napoleon took the crown from the Pope's hands and placed it on his own head. No one crowned Napoleon. Napoleon crowned himself. But ego was already digging his grave. His first catastrophic mistake was Spain. He invaded and installed his brother as king. The Spanish people refused to accept it and launched a brutal guerrilla war that bled France for 6 years. His second, and fatal, mistake was Russia. In 1812 he marched 650,000 soldiers into Russia. The Russians retreated, burned their own cities, and refused to fight. Napoleon captured Moscow and found it empty and on fire. He waited for a surrender that never came. Then winter arrived. Of the 650,000 men who entered Russia, fewer than 100,000 made it back. By 1815 he was finally crushed at Waterloo and exiled to the remote island of St. Helena in the middle of the South Atlantic Ocean. The man who crowned himself Emperor of Europe died alone on a rock in the middle of the ocean. Attila the Hun was called the Scourge of God. And he earned the title. He terrorized both the Eastern and Western Roman empires simultaneously. He extorted billions in gold from Constantinople. Populations fled before his army even arrived. Just the rumor of Attila was enough to empty a city. Rome, the eternal city that had never been successfully sacked by a foreign enemy for 800 years, paid Attila tribute just to stay away. And then, nothing. In 453 AD, the night after his wedding, Attila was found dead in his bed. No wounds. No battle. No poison ever proven. He had suffered a massive nosebleed in his sleep and drowned in his own blood. The most feared man in the world. The king who made Rome beg. Dead on his wedding night from a nosebleed. His sons immediately began fighting over his empire. Within a generation the Hunnic Empire had collapsed entirely. The people he had conquered rose up. His sons were killed or scattered. The Scourge of God left no lasting mark on the map. No cities. No institutions. No roads. Nothing but fear, and fear fades the moment the fearful man is gone. 5 men. 5 empires. 5 different ways to lose everything. Alexander trusted no system but himself. Caesar trusted too many of the wrong people. Genghis built power but forgot to build permanence. Napoleon let ego override strategy. Attila built an empire entirely on terror, and terror without a man to enforce it is just a memory. The pattern is always the same. The higher they climb, the more they believe the rules no longer apply to them. And that belief, that quiet, seductive belief, is always the beginning of the fall. History doesn't remember them as failures. But it does remember exactly how they fell. And maybe that's the most important lesson of all. If you made it this far, you already think differently from most people. Subscribe to Terrascope, and next week, we go even deeper.